Go ahead and get started with our meeting. We will have our vice chair is gone today for some medical reasons with his wife. So as you think of it, you might mention Mary Reichman in prayer. Also, we have a member who's sort of stuck in because of the fog from a distance, and it's below freezing temperatures, so they will be WebExing. And we also have a fill-in to our ranking member. Senator Ware is unable to be with us, so we have with us this morning. I'm sorry, I guess we got the wrong nameplate there. So we've got Senator Sykes. You don't know? Okay. Yeah, well, she's been around a day or two, but and today is SEK Day on the Hill, which is Southeast Kansas Day on the Hill. So when the people from Southeast Kansas come around, show them some courtesy. I throw that out because I know we also have Western Kansas Day and other days on the Hill. But we will jump right in with our budget recommendations. We had been working on the Department of Agriculture, and so we will pick up there. We had asked for some information. And I don't know, Mr. Drury, if you want to try to explain this or just let it explain itself, because it's got a lot of numbers, a lot of writing on it. I really appreciate your effort in working on getting the information to the committee and for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I can talk through that really quickly. This is the State Water Plan Fund table, the document that you all have in front of you. What this shows is 2023 actuals along with the 24 and 25 agency request, along with the governor's recommendation for 24 and 25 by agency, by program as well. So, and these would represent individual line items within the budgets for these agencies. Those are expenditures up at the top, again, by agency. And then towards the bottom is revenues, including beginning balances, different receipts, the receipts that are...
Excuse me real quick. Can you tell, I'm not quite sure. The blue sheet, okay.
Senator Dahl, we're working off the blue sheet, and also for the audience, I apologize. I had a white sheet, a pirated copy, but the blue one is the official one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and then blue for water, of course, for the State Water Plan Fund. But so then the revenues, receipts in there, so the different fees that are paid, along with any statutory transfers that do occur, that would include the general fund, the EDIF, and then you will notice for 24 and 25, those transfers from the general fund are higher. That is in relation to Senate Sub for House Bill 2302, excuse me. And then, and then the estimated out, then any balances carrying forward. So again, this shows what the agency requested, along with what the governor recommended for expenditures for those particular line items for each agency.
Thank you, Mr. Drury. Committee, do you have any questions? I know, Senator Fagg, you had requested the information, and it's a lot to digest.
I think we could spend the whole week on this one.
We don't have a whole week, Senator.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I have, when you go down to it, it seems like that there's a lot of new funding deals for 2024 versus the actuals, like flood response study, you know, for $400,000. I guess I would question what that is and who's doing that. The Arbuckle study, I thought we was already doing that, because I've heard that in the last couple of years, so I'm kind of surprised we didn't spend any money on that in 2023, and now we're going out that way. The water injection dredging, I understand that one, so that's no deal. I understand 2302. I mean, I'm just going down through the list, questioning some of this stuff. I mean, they're just double in a lot of these areas, so I'm sure that somebody has spent a lot of time all year trying to decide what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. That's just my response to what I'm seeing here. So I appreciate the information, because this does give us a picture of what's going on here. So,
all right, Senator McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot of these increases are because we gave them more money last year to do more things to protect our water resources. The Arbuckle situation is because they are actually They're going to be doing some test drilling and trying to capture the pressure of the what's in the pipe. And so the reason it was built up is because they're doing more things now in order to find out what's happening with these Class 1 and Class 2 wells.
Further questions or comments regarding the blue sheet? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've been really good about helping us focus on what we're working on at hand. And so I think probably the two important parts of this plan fund description are for the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Wildlife, Parks and Tourism. So we've already approved the budget for the Water Office, so that would include the Arbuckle. And we can get more information later as a committee, but I'm trying to focus on the Department of Ag and the Department of Wildlife and Parks.
Any additional comments, questions on the blue sheet? All right, see, Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if we're going to focus in on Department of Agriculture, it might be interesting where they spend $86,000. What's the wetland program? It's going from 86 to 733. Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, $189,000 going up to $1,980,000. There's two that jumps at me that I'd find interesting as to what we're doing in those areas.
Mr. Drury, do you wish to address those issues since we're dealing with Department of Agriculture specifically?
Yeah, I can take a look at that, Mr. Chair. Thank you. What were the two line items again? Wetland.
I might just start down, I kind of start from the bottom going up. I'd start from the top and go down. In the Department of Agriculture, water resource cost share, you know, that's doubled, $2.5 million. What's that program and what does that do? That'd be my first question for you, Luke.
Mr. Chair, I would need to reach out to the agency and do a little bit more research on to get the specifics on that specific program and all that it entails in order to answer that question.
All right, we'll ask you to do that. And then Senator Fagg, you also mentioned another fund.
Yeah, a couple other ones while you're doing that, if you would for me, please. That non-point source pollution assistance, you know, that's up $1.2 million. And Conservation Reserve Enhancement Project, that's the one I mentioned to you. And then the that wetland program would be interesting. And the Kansas Reservoir Protection Initiative, you know, exactly how they're going to spend that money and what for. So we had nothing there and we're spending $1.5 million there, so be interested in those.
Do you have any answers at this time, Mr. Drury? If you do not, that's fine. Okay, Senator Francisco.
So I was just going to comment, some of these went up in 24, and they're now, if we look at the 25 request, it's again lower. So if you look at the riparian and wetland program, it did go up to 733,000, but now it's back to 154 for 25. So I think, as Senator McGinn indicated, this is probably the state water plan funds that there was a lot of support for in the legislature last year, and we asked to get that money on the ground once we had appropriated it.
Senator McGinn.
Thank you. I'll just take a few of these items. First, explain Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. That's a critical program that we began 20 years ago, and I was involved in that. What that does is it helps buy out water rights. Particularly, it started in western Kansas. I believe they might try to use it also in the Rattlesnake area. The reason for that is what they do is they buy the water rights. This is just a state match. They draw down quite a bit of federal money So after 15 years, people get a bonus check to not put their water, or to not put the water back into irrigation use. So it's a tool to help us conserve water in these areas that are over pumping and over irrigating. Non-point source pollution, what that does is helps our lakes more than anything. Our big reservoirs have sedimentation problems, and what this program does is helps farmers in the area perhaps put in buffer strips along the lakes so that sedimentation doesn't go in, nor it also helps decrease the amount of pollution that goes in the lakes as well. Excellent program. Poster child for that, in my opinion, is the Cheney Lake Task Force has been working for over 20 years. They have the least sedimentation of many of our reservoirs because of that work that Wichita has helped pay for. And that's their main supply of drinking water.
Committee, rather than continue to spend time on this sheet, I'm going to urge, as a part of our recommendation, that this be included for Ways and Means, and for Ways and Means, and those of you who are on Ways and Means will have additional opportunity to gain a better understanding of all of these funds and if they are the right amount, right dollar amount or not. And so we do need to move forward with fiscal year 2024 budget, and to save time, I'm going to throw out a motion, and then I've got another one, and we're on fiscal year 2024. The agency had requested a livestock investigator partnership, $50,000. This was not part of the governor's recommendation, and it partners with the Attorney General to fund investigators for the state. I'm going to make a motion that we include that funding, the $50,000, and that would be from State General Fund. Mr. Drury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You said that was for fiscal year 2024? I believe, and I'm checking, the governor's recommendation does include the $50,000 for 2024. It does not include the $50,000 for 2025.
My mistake.
That would be, yes, 2024 is included, 2025 is not included in the governor's recommendation.
We'll worry about 25 when we get to 25. Thank you for keeping the chair on line. So,
Certainly.
Senator McGinn, your second is not necessary because I'm going to withdraw the motion. And I would make another motion, and that's for the agriculture laboratory. There's $150,000 involved there, and the governor's recommended that we take it from State General Fund. I'm going to make a motion that we take it from fee funds rather than from State General Fund. Is there a second on the motion? Seeing.
I'll second it for you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Fagg. So seconded by Senator Fagg. Discussion on the motion. And I'm working off of a sheet that I have. I apologize, committee, I don't know what you may have or where it may be found in the fiscal write-up, but I have just a separate sheet that I think everyone's been provided with. Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see fees and tax increase almost the same thing. If you want to do it, you can compare it to homeschooling, because you can sit there and you can spread the costs by putting it in the general fund, but then you're narrowing the cost when you put it in a fee. So in a sense, you're punishing. I mean, pesticide license, and when you're trying to get pesticide license for most anything in ag, those fees are incredibly high, and the farmers are hurting anyway. And then we keep putting these fees on there instead of putting it in the general fund. So I can't agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Someone who, this is my first day in the committee, what is the cushion of that fee fund? Do we have any idea?
I do not know, Mr. Drury, if you have that information. We had asked about fee fund, and I don't have anything in front of me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I can pull that really quickly. It'll take me just a moment, though.
Okay, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I so appreciate it, and I know you did too, the Department of Agriculture giving us the budget overview. So this is a series of fee funds, not a total. And so I'm looking in here, and if it's red, that means that at the end of the fiscal year FY '23, some of these were negative. So it would be possible to perhaps reduce the fee funds, but I don't think we can completely eliminate them. There's a lot of funds that are needed because of the importance of getting these inspections done. And certainly the Department of Agriculture, if they don't do some inspections, you can't send your product out of state, or you can't bring it in. So and again, since we're in FY 2024, much of this has already been spent, and they don't have an opportunity, so we could just look at the balances. We don't really have any way at this point to increase fees.
We'll see if we get an answer shortly from Mr. Drury. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. Once we get an answer, we're going to move forward with a vote. Mr. Drury?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the Department of Agriculture utilizes a litany of different fee funds, so it's not just one particular fund, depending upon, that's over a dozen different funds that the laboratories use. So in order to pull one discreetly very quickly here, I will not be able to do that. That will take some time to go through all those funds and collate those together.
All right, so potentially there's sufficient funds, but we don't have an answer, so we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion to shift the funding from state general fund to fee funds, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Motion fails. On fiscal year 2024, committee, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I got a motion that we accept the governor's recommendation as presented for the Department of Agriculture for FY 2024.
Motion by Fag, seconded by Francisco, that fiscal year 2024, we accept the governor's recommendation as presented and make no changes. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Moving to fiscal year 2025 for the Department of Agriculture, we have several, and Mr. Drury, on this sheet that I've got, I'm going to start with the ones that I think are going to be fairly simple. Not necessarily for this committee, but the Feral Swine Management Partnership. The governor did not recommend the $25,000. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, for 2025, the governor does recommend the USDA feral swine. The only one that she does not recommend for 2025 for the Department of Agriculture is the livestock investigators. And then in addition to that, there is the addition of the $1 million from the general fund for that local farm-to-food program.
So on the feral swine, she does recommend the additional $25,000 that they asked for. Is that correct?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So that's been dealt with, committee. Do you have any thoughts? I have concern, committee, with the Farm to Food Bank program. $2.5 million was put in by the federal government for a couple years. They apparently liked it because they put another $2.5 million in for a couple years, and now they have totally pulled their funding. I understand the benefits of the program, but I'm not convinced that this is a job of government, the responsibility of government to provide state general fund money for the Farm to Food Bank program, which is $1 million. And so I'm going to make a motion that we delete the $1 million that was put in for the Food to Farm program, because this committee is starting a new state program. Means we're going to be asked to fund it year after year after year, and I'm confident that the dollar amount is going to increase with time. If you look at the January revenue collections, we were underwater significantly, and I realize this is just $1 million, but as people back home would say, $1 million here, $1 million there, it starts to add up. So there's a motion to not put the $1 million in. Is there a second? Seeing none, the motion dies for lack of a second. And you said, Mr. Drury, that the legal services support was not recommended by the governor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The governor does recommend the legal support. That is, to my understanding, a one-time expenditure for the different litigation that the agency finds itself in currently. The only item not recommended by the governor for 2025 is the contracted $50,000 for livestock investigators with the Attorney General's office.
Okay, thank you. Committee, what's your pleasure regarding fiscal year 2025 for the Department of Agriculture? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee accept the budget proposal for the Kansas Department of Agriculture and recommend it for fiscal year 2025 as presented.
There's a motion. There's a second by Senator Fagg. That was a second, correct?
No, I'll wait for a second.
Okay. Okay, there's a second by Senator McGinn. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is where the livestock investigator would fit in. So I don't know if we could amend funding that $50,000 at that point. I think that's an important thing, so.
There's a motion on the floor to accept it as presented.
Would that be an amendment to that before it passes, or how do we do that?
You can make a substitute motion if you
Okay.
wish. Or you can, or the original.
Or she's got her motion in second, we got to vote on that and go with it then.
I will allow a substitute motion.
Will you? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move that we accept the governor's recommendation for 2025 Department of Agriculture budget with the amendment that we add in the $50,000 for the livestock investigator.
All right, thank you, Senator Fagg. Is there a second on the substitute motion? Second by Senator Kirshen. Discussion on the motion. So we have a substitute motion to adopt the governor's recommendation with an addition of $50,000, as you have heard. Discussion on the motion. Senator Sykes.
Thank you. Just a question, and because of my ignorance not being here, does the Attorney General's budget also have money for the same line item?
Mr. Drury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This would be payments to the Attorney General's office. So those expenditures then would go once the agency pays the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office then uses that money to fund its own operations. So I'm not familiar with the Attorney General's office's budget, but those monies then would be receipted to the Attorney General and then expended by that agency. But so no FTEs here for the livestock investigators. This would be a contract with the Attorney General's office from the KDA.
Further discussion. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I remember right, there was an increase on cattle thefts and stuff that was reported to us. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, we will vote on the motion, which is a substitute motion, which will, of course, then make it unnecessary for the original motion. The motion is to adopt the governor's recommendation with the $50,000 increase in funding. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. So we are finished with the Department of Agriculture. We will move into the Department of Wildlife and Parks, and we will look starting with fiscal year 2024. And on your budget analysis committee, I would urge you to turn to page 8. In page 8, we have a request from the agency. It's number 3, by the way. I guess it's page 8 into 9. And we have a request from the agency for funding for Flint Hills Trail Grant and match. And then the governor's recommendation was to take the money from state general fund. Mr. Drury, correct me if I misspeak, because you understand these things much better than the committee. I would make a motion that we go with the agency's original request, delete the governor's recommendation, but this does not change the funding for them. They still have the funding. As we were told in committee, they have significant balances in their fee funds, information provided by the department, and so we're not looking at doing anything that apparently they cannot afford when you look at their fee fund balances. So again, this would just shift the funding back to the original request from the agency rather than the state general fund. So that is a motion. Is there a second on the motion? Seeing none, the motion dies for lack of second. The funding apparently will continue to come from state general fund. On page 9, number 4, committee, it would be the same thing. The agency has requested funding for the El Dorado Shower House, and they had requested that they have the privilege of taking money from the Parks Fee Fund. The governor recommendation was to use state general fund money, and so I'm going to make a motion that we go back to the department's request as presented. So we would delete the $200,000 from the governor's rec from state general fund, and the money would then come from fee funds within the agency. Is there a second on the motion? Seeing none, the motion dies for lack of a second. And I do have one more that we will attempt to save some taxpayer money. There was a request on page 9, number 6, and that is they're asking for six FTE positions, 1 administration, 4 in the Ecological Services Program, and 1 in the Parks Program. I'm going to make a motion that we drop that down to 5, so we just remove 1 FTE, and that 1 that would be removed would be in the administration program. So I'm making a motion to, again, just delete 1 FTE, and the position would be in the administration program. Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second.
There is a second by Senator Fagg. Discussion on the motion. Senator Fagg.
So we're talking on page 9, number 6.
Yes, sir.
My question is, how many ecological services, those 4 FTE positions, how many do we have now, and why do we need more? That's my question.
Mr. Drury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the budget analysis, there is, I'm trying to find the page for you, page 17. Yeah, page 17 will show a program overview, which shows expenditures and FTEs in those program areas. Excuse me. So for 2023, the agency had 12 FTEs in the Ecological Services Program. And then if you skip a little bit further to page, a little bit further on, there's the Ecological Services Overview in there as well. And then I would note that those particular FTEs are related to aquatic nuisance species, or excuse me, aquatic nuisance items, and funding is attached with funding from the federal government on aquatic nuisance. So that's what those 4 FTEs are, and related to aquatic nuisance. But the table here does show FTEs by program area, and a little bit more detail a little bit further on in the budget analysis as well.
Senator Fagg, additional questions? Or does that answer your question?
Yeah, when you said there was 12, that caught my ear, and we're going up from that. And I'm questioning, that's something that I don't feel we need at this time. I haven't been convinced that we need that, I guess what I'm saying. And
We can look at a motion once we deal with the current motion on the floor.
yeah.
Further discussion on the motion, Senator Francisco.
Thank you. I guess I'm just saying I do understand the positions, and this is for FY 24. So if we add them, it wouldn't be a position for a whole year. It would just be the position from the time that the budget gets passed moving forward. And Luke, Mr. Drury can help me with that.
Mr. Drury?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That would be correct to the agency, or excuse me, if the committee were to approve the FTEs and it stays included throughout the process, then that would be added for 2024. As noted, it is February, so we are a little bit more than halfway through the fiscal year as it stands right now.
Senator Sykes?
Thank you. Yes, on the motion, the administrative program, as I'm looking at this, is talking about the Topeka office and the Pratt office. Do we know what that administrative FTE increase would be?
Mr. Drury?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To my knowledge, that would be here in the Topeka office.
Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other thought that goes through my mind is that we are going to have a new director here in the next year, and who knows how that kind of program will work. So I guess I don't like adding FTEs before we see how the program comes out. So, new program.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion. Senator Francisco?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't believe that the aquatic nuisance is a new program. I think it's just an expanded program. And, you know, this is funding from the federal government to do this because they recognize the risk to so many of our reservoirs, lakes, and streams if we continue this. And it also is important to be a good neighbor.
I will remind the committee what Senator Dahl has said. All money is apparently taxpayer money, whether it's federal money, fee funds, or state general fund money. Further discussion on the, Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where are we picking up where the federal government's there? I'm missing something, Senator Francisco, in there somewhere.
Mr. Drury, do you wish to answer that, or do you wish me to pass it on to Senator Francisco? Senator Francisco, can you answer the question?
I'm remembering that from the discussion that we had, and there should be, if you look on the, just on the front page of the budget analysis, when you look at federal funds, the estimate is that they will go up 300,000, and some of that could be for this program. And I also know that programs change. So if I think we would be following the funding from the federal government about what programs that they believe are very important, because a lot of this money comes as the matching funds. This would not be, I don't believe, matching funds for, or funds from ammunition sales or match to permits, but there are considerable federal funds.
Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we shall vote on the motion. The motion is to delete one FTE from the administration program for fiscal year 2024. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion fails. We are back on fiscal year 2024. The chair has nothing additional as far as saving taxpayer money for fiscal 2024. What's the committee's wishes? Seeing none, we will hold that in the committee. No, I guess there must be a motion somewhere. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee recommend the FY 2024 budget for the Department of Wildlife and Parks as presented.
There's a motion by Francisco, seconded by McGinn. Discussion on the motion. Senator Fagg.
Flint Hills Trail Grant and Match. The $3 million that comes into that, where is the Flint Hills Trail Grant? Where's it at now? Where are we in the progress of that? Where are we going? Need somebody, that's a big program. And I'm concerned that we have water needs in our small communities, that we ought to be spending more money in those areas instead of out working on new projects that we can't maintain now with some of the stuff that we have. So Somebody talk on the trail thing a little bit.
Mr. Drury?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the Flint Hills Trail has been a item of discussion or area that the Department of Wildlife and Parks has worked on for a number of years, to my knowledge. In particular, for this particular piece, is that the department has received word from the federal government, from a highway administration or federal agency, that they have received federal funding of $3 million for this particular grant. There is a state match attached to it, and so the governor's recommendation includes $3 million general fund for a total spend of $6 million to capture those federal monies and to then account for the entirety of the state portion of that match, and then that would lead then to additional monies from this particular grant flowing into the state, into the agency in FY 2024 and in FY 2025.
So, Mr. Drury, in looking at that, the governor's recommendations nearly double the agency ask, correct? Okay, Senator Fagg, did you have additional questions?
Where is the Flint Hills Trail?
Mr. Drury?
Mr. Chair, the Flint Hills Trail, to mine, I couldn't speak specifically geographically where it is, but it is a vast trail system all throughout the state. I'll reach out to the agency to see how many miles that is, but it is a vast trail system.
Senator Fagg?
So are we in the middle of this? Have we started the Flint Hills Trail? It's kind of, this is going to complete it, or is this a brand-new project, or what's the status of it?
I'm sorry, Mr. Drury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, well, here we go. From the KDWP's website, it's 118 miles from Osawatomie to Harrington, 8th longest rail trail in the U.S. and longest trail in Kansas. Looks like as the fall of 2020, 89 miles were opened and traversable between Osawatomie and Council Grove. And so this is a project that has been going on for a number of years. I'm not sure on when it will be finished or if, ongoing maintenance and whatnot related to it as well. But it is something that has been going on for the last 4 or 5 years of about 118 miles worth of trail.
Senator Fagg?
Mr. Chairman, when you go back to the needs of our communities for water, they had, if I remember, like over $300 million that was needed for that. I feel like that we need to be spending money on that type of thing and also repairing our state parks. We are expanding our parks, and I get emails on the condition of our parks. So my position is that we need to maintain what we have before we grow. So we should be in a period of time right now of repairing, not growing. So I'd be one to pass on the $3 million. Say you don't get the grant, that's okay. I think it's important that we work on maintaining.
Is there a motion forthcoming or not necessarily, Senator Fagg? It would be a substitute motion, just like the last.
It would, okay. So I'd make a motion that we do not take the $3 million out for the matching thing for the Flint Hills grant at this time for 2025.
It would be a motion to pass the FY 2024 budget as presented by the governor with that deletion, with that change. Is that correct? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Sounds good to me. There was another project that was out there too. Is that in 2025? We're working 2024. Okay, we'll worry about that later. That would be my motion.
There is a motion to pass the governor's budget as recommended with the one change, and that would be to delete the, could I get your help, Senator Fagg, to delete the $3 million from state general fund?
That's where it was coming from, wasn't it, Luke?
Mr. Drury?
Mr. Chair, it's the, make sure that I'm tracking. The committee has approved the FY 2024 governor's recommendation for this agency.
We have not voted.
Already? Okay. Right. So then that would be for 2020. Yeah, it would be for 2024. There's $3 million. I apologize. I got a little bit sidetracked there. 2024 governor's recommendation does include $3 million from the general fund, and also $3 million from that federal grant, as mentioned earlier, for that Flint Hills Trail grant match. So then the motion would be to simply delete that recommendation in its entirety. Is it?
My understanding is to delete just the 3 million SGF. Is that correct, Senator Fagg?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. And I will second the motion. Discussion on the motion. So this will be one vote to pass the budget out, but also delete the 3 million for the Flint Hills Trail Grant and match from State General Fund. Discussion on the motion
For which year?
for 2024.
Okay.
Senator Francisco?
So the supplemental enhancement request, both 2024 and 2025, so that's why on page 815, it has both of those. I certainly understand concerns, and I'm hearing the senator comment about water. And then I'm going to go back to some of the comments I made yesterday that we are out of the water fund. We're spending $7 million to help junior water right holders with water enhancements that will allow the Quivira Reservoir to continue to operate. So that seems a much better place to look for money if you're concerned about water than it would be the Flint Hills Trail.
Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am concerned that when we had over 300 million in applications for the small communities needs water towers, infrastructure, those type of things, that's the focus I'm looking for instead of trails. So I'd rather take that $3 million, and if we need to spend $3 million, I'd rather be spending it in that area. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Senator Sykes?
Thank you. My question would be, what is the economic benefit of these trails in the tourism, and are we kind of shooting ourselves in the foot and possibly losing that match would be my concern.
Mr. Drury, do you have an answer for it? Okay. Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of answer that. When we talk economic development and we talk tourism, people coming to Kansas, I can tell you the El Dorado State Park, you can go out there, and I got pictures of picnic tables, bathrooms. We get people to come here and they see something like this. They're going to go home. They're not going to want to come back, and they're going to tell their neighbors. We need to get our quality up on what we have now as we do the tourism thing. So if we can't take care of that, I think we're wasting our money in the other area. I'm all for tourism and stuff, but I want them to have a good feeling when they come. Now, I haven't been out on the bike trails. I've been to our largest state park that 1 million people comes to, and I'm embarrassed with some of the stuff I see out there.
Further discussion, Senator Dahl?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Didn't we just approved $200,000 for the El Dorado State shower house to improve? Maybe we need to take some more money out of the state general fund and put it towards the shower house and picnic tables and things like that. If we're going to start on that to improve it, and we're going to improve one bathroom at a time or a shower house at a time, we're going to be here a long time. Trails is a quality of life, and when people come to Kansas, when I hear people talk about Kansas or I hear them talk about Colorado, you know, they talk about Colorado, about going into the mountains and doing hikes and all that. The Flint Hills are absolutely beautiful. And when you can have people walking through there and going through that, that's going to be a draw for us. So I think we're being a bit, you know, if we're going to fix things up, then it's a joke to spend $200,000 on one bathroom. We need to either put more money into that program, if we're going to put money into that program, or we need to approve that, in my opinion. Thank you.
I will remind the committee that we're discussing $3 million that the agency did not request, but the governor put in on their behalf. So rather than continue discussion, I think we're spinning our wheels. We're going to vote on the motion. The motion is to pass the agency budget out as recommended by the governor, with the exception of deleting $3 million state general fund for the, I've even lost the name now, but the Flint Hills Trail grant and match. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion fails. We're back on the motion to pass the fiscal year 2024 out as recommended by the governor. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We will move on to fiscal year 2025. Committee, I will direct your attention to page 12, number 1. That is, and I'm going to make a motion to delete the $200,000 for land acquisition. The reason is they cannot purchase land, acquire land without legislative approval. They do not have legislative approval. There is not a bill to allow for them to purchase the land in Jewell County, the low wildlife management area. So since they're not going to purchase it, I don't see any need to leave the money with the agency that they cannot spend since it is designated for a purchase. So I'm going to make that as a motion. Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Senator Fagg. Discussion on the motion. I'm looking at page 12, number 1. And again, the chair does not see any need to leave $200,000 with the agency when they have demonstrated, apparently from the information they gave us, they have significant fee fund balances. So I don't know what they would do with the $200,000, maybe just draw interest, because it would be designed to purchase something they do not have the authority to purchase. So that's the reason I'm making the motion. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm reading the description, and I was looking at the description on page 16, which says the agency indicates that the state general fund portion of the request would be used as matching funds for a federal grant. So the $800,000 from this, I'm assuming, is that federal money, and we're getting this state match. It seems like we've gone through a lot so far this year, but we, in our session, we've still got a lot of time to go. Bills can be introduced, particularly in Ways and Means, and that would be a logical place for a land acquisition bill. So I would like to see this remain at this time, and then look to see what other work might be done in terms of the legislature considering this land for purchase. So if we don't keep this in the budget, then we're saying we know that we're not going to purchase it. If we keep it in the budget, it doesn't have to be spent, but it could be spent if the legislature agrees that it's important for the management area. And I continue to hear that we don't have enough land for walk-in hunting, and that expanding that does add to tourism opportunities.
I'll remind the committee, leaving the funding in without the authority to purchase the land, and I was told by the department they do not plan to introduce legislation this session to purchase the land. Senator Fagg, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to go over we can't maintain what we already have, and we're out buying new land. So, and was doing this because of federal matching. I remind everyone that the federal government's $34 trillion in debt. And so these kind of things are what we need to start getting responsible with, in my humble opinion. And as we look forward with things like this, I'm not saying we can't look at them down the road. I'm just saying we need to focus on what we have. And that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Senator Fagg. I think you've communicated that fairly well. The chair's in agreement, by the way. Appreciate that. Further, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you have heard that the agency is not planning to request a bill, then I would be comfortable with eliminating this from the budget.
Senator Francisco, I appreciate that, and I was told that by the Secretary specifically. Now, I will continue with that discussion. I was told that they would not. I said, so we need to delete the $200,000 since you're not going to purchase land. The comment was, well, we'd like to keep our $200,000. That didn't sit well with the chair. Further discussion on the motion. Seeing none, we'll vote on the motion. The motion is to delete the $200,000 for land acquisition for the Lovewell Wildlife Management Area in Jewell County. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. The next item that the chair is going to make a motion on is page 12 and 13, number 2 and number 10, and that relates to the match funds as we had dealt with in 2024. The motion is to delete the governor's recommendation and go with the agency request. So again, we're not removing any funding. We're just changing it from state general fund dollars to the agency request, which was money from the $3.8 million, $300,000 from the parks fee, and $3.5 million from the Federal Highway Planning and Construction Fund. So again, the motion is to delete the governor's recommendation, which is state general fund money, in number 10 on page 13, and go back to the agency request. Mr. Drury, is that understandable, or is that correct way to state that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The governor's recommendation for the state general fund portion was only in FY 2024. The governor's recommendation maintains the agency's request. The change that the governor makes is to delete $300,000 from the parks fee fund, and she does not replace it with anything. She just maintains the federal funding portion with no state portion. Because the general fund portion in 2024 would have covered the entirety of the state portion for that particular project.
All right, thank you. So the motion is not necessary, so I will withdraw the motion. And I'm going to then ask you a question on page 12, number 3. No, I'm not going to ask a question. I see what it is. Page 12, number 3, you will see that Lehigh State Park requests $215,000 and 2 FTE positions in 25. I go back to the discussion committee we have already had. The agency has 28 state parks, and we have seen documentation from pictures that they have not been maintaining the state parks. And Lehigh is in southeast Kansas. I got that. And I want to see things happen in southeast Kansas. But I don't know why we're continuing to expand an agency that's been doing a sorry job of maintaining their facilities. So I'm going to make a motion that we cut the funding down by $107,000 from the 215, which leaves them more than half, and we delete one FTE position. So that means they do have one FTE position for the park. So that is the motion, to delete one FTE position and reduce the funding by $107,000. And again, if you need to look at that, that's page 12, number 3. Is that a second, Senator Dahl?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is that a second, Senator Dahl?
Excuse me.
Are you making a second?
Sorry.
You're not seconding the motion?
I'm sorry.
I will, Mr.
Okay, seconded by Senator Fack. Senator Dahl, discussion on the motion.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
That's fine. I was glad for your second.
Okay. You know, we want to maintain these parks and such. And so we're taking away a full-time position, an employee. You know, it takes workers, it takes people to work to keep these things nice. We can't have one person trying to take up a whole park. So I think we're getting to the point where if we're taking away employees when we're trying to upgrade a park, we're kind of closing the barn door after the horses are out. Thank you.
I had conversation with Thrive Allen County this morning regarding this, and they are maintaining the trails currently themselves without the agency. At least that's what I was told. And so I don't see, committee, how one additional person could make a significant difference in the park, but it will be the desire of the committee. Discussion on the motion. Okay, seeing no further discussion, again, committee, The reason for the motion is to not expand an agency that hasn't done a good job maintaining our parks, because it's an embarrassment to myself, and apparently another senator's already indicated when people come to our parks and they look as bad as they do, they go back home and say, you sure don't want to go to Kansas parks. So I think this would be a way to help the agency understand that the legislature is serious about them doing a better job with their parks. On the motion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Motion fails. Committee, what's your wishes for fiscal year 2025? Senator Fagg.
Number 6, we got $3.5 million in ARPA funds going to that project, expanding. Senator Sykes could probably help us with ARPA funds. That ARPA funds can be spent somewhere else, I think, possibly. So I'm inclined to pass on that at this point.
So what page are you on?
I'm on page 13.
Page 13, number 6, you said?
Yeah, the
Okay.
Lehigh, Little Jerusalem, Kannapolis. I'm not saying we don't do that down the road, I just don't see us doing it at this time.
You said 6 million?
Number 6 on 13, it's about
Three and a
middle of the page.
3.5 million?
Yeah,
Okay, are you making a motion?
yes,
Your motion is to delete numbers.
to delete number 6.
Okay. Mr. Drury?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For that item number 6, that $3.5 million is included in the agency's 24 revised estimate, and they will spend it all in 24 and not carrying it into 25. So that means that, so that's just indicative then. If you look on page 12 on the table itself, you'll see that that is a deletion of $3.5 million for Lehigh, Little Jerusalem, and Kannapolis and Clinton Park projects
So it was a request.
for 24.
I guess I thought page 12 and 13 was fiscal year 25.
That's what I thought.
Correct. That is for fiscal year 2025. The motion, if I'm understanding correctly, was to delete 3.5 million. There would be no reason to delete the 3.5 million because it's not occurring in 25. Occurring in 24, the table is showing a change from the 24 budget submitted and recommended.
Okay. I understand, so the motion's not in order because there's no funding there unless you're just wanting to put some money in someplace else.
Should address it in 24.
Further discussion? What's your pleasure with Senator Fagg?
Number 9.
Not what's your pleasure with Senator Fagg, but I'm recognizing Senator Fagg.
Okay. Number 9, capital improvements. When I look at that, are we building any new projects at all, like visitor centers, any of this kind of stuff in that number?
Mr. Drury, do you have an answer to that question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an answer for that. If you, in 2024, for Lehigh, Little Jerusalem, Kannapolis, and Clinton State Parks, I do know at Clinton, the agency's request did include, part of that would be, as you stated, Senator Fagg, for a visitor center, actually, for Clinton State Park. In regard to the items for Lehigh, Little Jerusalem, and Kannapolis, I know the agency has planning documentation for Lehigh, including a visitor center, parking lots, amphitheater, things of that nature. I'm not exactly sure what's included for that, nor with Little Jerusalem or Kannapolis. So the only one I can speak to with certainty is for the Clinton Park project. But most of these projects are for maintenance of land, roads, bridges, wetlands, things of that nature. By and large, maintaining or rehabbing and repairing what is currently had as opposed to building something new.
Senator Fagg?
Mr. Chairman, my suggestion, it's 9:30, that they give us a little, I want to know what visitor centers are being built in this kind of thing so that we can examine that very carefully. If that's one of them, is there any other ones, that kind of thing. So any new improvements, I'd be interested in.
I appreciate that, Senator Fagg. That's information that we will have to get to the Ways and Means because we are asked and urged very strongly to pass something out, a recommendation to Ways and Means today. And I realize we are up against the clock, but so with that information, not necessarily, but if one's forthcoming. Senator Francisco.
I just wanted to comment that since this is capital improvements, we did have another committee, Joint Committee on State Building Construction, that has gone individually through those recommendations.
Committee, what's your pleasure with fiscal year 2025? No funding for them? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee recommend the budget for FY 2025 for the Department of Wildlife and Parks with one change to eliminate the 200,000 SGF. Is that in this?
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
And but so it's as presented without the 200,000.
Yeah. Our fiscal analyst will make us look good. He always does. Seeing no second. Oh, there is a second. Okay. Senator Sykes. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries. Committee, we have nothing else today. In the spirit of transparency, the chair will be writing a minority report to present four ways and means to understand some things about this agency and their budget. And if anyone else wishes to write a minority report, you're welcome to do so.